That guy's going to be some senator one day.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new episode of the Jesse Hughes Show. As always, I am Jesse Hughes. We are live here in lovely Lynchburg, Virginia. It's starting to turn fall weather here. We're starting to get some fall weather. It's nice. We have a special guest tonight. I'm sure many of you, if you've been active on X for the last few days, might have seen a viral debate going around between Vivek Ramaswamy and our guest tonight. Vivek made some claims about the Founding Fathers that we are going to dig into. We're going to discuss some of them not really as rooted in history as people like him would have you expect. However, we're going to dig into it. We're going to correct the record. Joining us tonight, new friend of the program. Everybody please welcome in Jeremy Carl. Jeremy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Jesse. How are you?
Doing great, doing fantastic. Had a busy day of law school today, as always, but we make it count. We make it count. So just so everybody knows, who is Jeremy Carl? Who are you? What do you do? What got you into this space? Just give us a brief little introduction about you.
Yeah, so as stated, my name is Jeremy Carl, and I'm just a kid, really. I go to public high school here in Bozeman, Montana. It's a town of about 50,000 people here in the southwest corner of the state. And yeah, I mean, I work. I've got a job. Do a little bit of high school wrestling. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of went viral, took off after this debate with Vivek Ramaswamy. I was angered by his his statements that he made in his speech as a Christian. And so, yeah, I just kind of confronted him and it took off. And so, now I'm kind of looking into more political type stuff. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. So obviously following Charlie Kirk's tragic martyrdom back in September, a lot of people were angry and upset. But TPUSA decided we're going to continue, we're going to press on, we're going to go forth and continue the tour that he had started there in Utah that day. They announced their speaker lineup. What made you decide when you saw Vivek on the lineup that you wanted to attend this event, possibly go in and ask him a question and discuss his role in the movement?
Yeah, so obviously he was the person who had been selected for Bozeman to kind of take Charlie's place, ironically, because he doesn't align with Charlie Kirk at all. And so I was honestly pretty disappointed when it turned out that he was going to be the one that was coming. But I did also see it as an opportunity, and so I still decided to go purely for the chance to challenge Vivek on his religious beliefs and on his kind of mandate to rule us. And so, yeah, I went for the entire purpose to do that because, frankly, I was just offended by the fact that, he's, professing to be somebody who's on our side, somebody who we should ally with. And so, yeah, that was just kind of my thought process behind it. This man is not a Christian. He can't represent Turning Point USA, which is a Christian organization. And he certainly cannot represent the people of the United States of America, who are a Christian people and in a Christian nation.
So you decided to go to this debate. I wanted to play the clip, but we were having some technical difficulties. So you go up so he has his speech. Just before we get into the debate itself, tell us a little bit about his speech, kind of what his main themes are. I've seen a couple of Vivek speeches at two separate events, so I think I have a little bit of an idea of what he probably talked about, but just kind of give us like a basic rundown of what he talked about that night. And you mentioned parts of it angered you. What specifically got you angry?
Yeah, absolutely. So he gave us a lecture on what it means to be an American. Oh, the irony. He talked about faith. He talked about prayer and God, and kind of the unalienable rights that we were given from God. He kind of just gave this lecture of what is the American identity? What does it mean to assimilate to American culture? And ironically, he actually mentioned religion in that. However, for those of you who've been paying attention, Vivek is not a Christian. And so why is he talking about the American religious identity if he is a Hindu, a religion that's, incredibly detached from our American religious identity? And so he talked about constantly just referencing these religious aspects because at the end of the day, what he's trying to do is convince us that he is like us, that a Hindu and a Christian actually aren't all that different. And so I was kind of very angered by that. I think at one point in his speech, or it was in response to somebody else's question, he even ended up quoting a Bible verse. I don't remember, or not a Bible verse, but a Bible story. I don't remember what Bible story it was. It was something from the Old Testament. I want to say something with Noah, but I honestly don't specifically remember. But it's just like, wow, the boldness, the irony from him, doing that. So yeah, that was kind of what was very ironic and annoying about his speech and his talk.
It's really interesting. I don't know a ton about Hinduism, but I have done a little bit of a study of all the major world religions just to get a basic idea of kind of what they believe. It's interesting with Hinduism, they kind of operate on this assumption that all the gods are kind of real, but also our gods are the best. I'm not quite sure how that fits in there, but I know I've been to, like I said a second ago, a couple of events where he's spoken. I was at an event that was a Christian-themed event. I'm not quite sure why he was there, if I'm being honest, but it was a Christian-themed event where they played worship music before, and I remember being confused because I was seated in a place where I could see him. And these were not, like, it wasn't just, like, your regular God is so good, da-da-da, kind of worship music. Like, these were songs that were specifically referencing Christ as being the only way. And it was odd. I saw him singing along to these songs, knowing full well, this man does not believe that Christ is Savior, the only way to salvation. He, he postures himself sometimes. Like, he has his 10 truths that he references in every speech, one of them being God is real. Which God? But it is interesting to see. But just moving along, so you had decided you wanted to debate him. You wanted to talk about this Christian founding that America has and kind of his role. What was your question and what was the response that you got?
Yeah, so I essentially asked him if he's conservative, to which he answered yes, because of course he'd be conservative. And then I asked him, okay, if you're conservative, how can you be conservative if you are a Hindu? Because that's not, you're not conserving anything. So I asked him, what are you conserving? And then and kind of along with that same question, I asked him, well, I gave him a statistic that Ohio, the state that he's running for governor in, is 64% Christian. And I asked him how he can represent those people if he's not a Christian. And in terms of the response he got, it was a very derogatory, but also just completely evaded both questions. He started off by saying, I'm not here to justify my faith any more than you are, which I thought was really dumb because I am here to justify my faith, first of all. And secondly, you should be here to justify your faith. You're speaking as a conservative. And then he asked me if I knew who Thomas Jefferson was, which I found funny because, it's a blatant insult. Do you know who Thomas Jefferson is? Yes, I know who Thomas Jefferson is. Then he asked me if I knew what document he signed, to which I replied the Declaration of Independence. And he, then went on to lecture me about how Thomas Jefferson was a deist and how that somehow makes it so that this kind of idea we have of him not being a Hindu being a problem makes it okay because Thomas Jefferson was a deist, which I think is funny because, Thomas Jefferson, yes, was a deist. However, he was a Christian deist. If that makes sense. And yes, he was a heretic. He believed heresy that would send him to hell. However, culturally, he behaved as a Christian. He participated in Christian society, and many other things like this. And so that's very, very different from being a Hindu. He also made a factually inaccurate statement saying that Benjamin Franklin was a deist. That's not a historical consensus. There's a lot of debate and as to whether that's true, if it's up in the air. He may have been Episcopal. He was raised Quaker. Ben Franklin kind of jumps around religiously. So that was kind of the response I got. Very dodge the question. And honestly, just derogatory.
The interesting thing about Benjamin Franklin, people often claim him as a deist, like you said, and there is debate on that. One thing in particular that comes to my mind is I know deism is typically, for those in the audience who might not know, deism is typically defined as believing there is a God, but he kind of works as this divine clockmaker where he creates the universe and then is just absent from its affairs, lets things run, doesn't involve himself, doesn't intervene, just kind of lets things run. That's the base tenet of deism from a historical perspective. The interesting thing about Franklin is even if he was a deist, he did not operate like one, at least not publicly. There's a story that comes to mind during the First Continental Congress. He specifically invokes prayer. He tells the others, he's kind of the elder statesman in the room, and he tells the others, we need to pray that God would intervene on our behalf and that we would operate within the will of God, because he operated with this understanding that God is not going to assist us in this task unless we ask for his divine assistance. That doesn't sound like deism. That sounds like someone who at least has a basic understanding of Christianity, even if he's not a Christian. And even if he was a deist, and even if Thomas Jefferson was a deist, I know you know this, and I know some of the audience knows this, but the majority of America, I'm pretty sure it was like 98% Christian at the time. You could not operate publicly in America as an atheistic or even deistic figure and not get pushback. Thomas Jefferson, despite privately rejecting the faith, carried around a Book of Common Prayer because he understood that he had to at least posture himself as a Christian. And it's interesting to me that individuals like Vivek will often appeal to this idea of this secular neutrality, that America wasn't founded as a Christian nation, that America didn't have a Christian founding, and we'll get into that more in a second. But it's interesting to me that he uses this common line despite the fact that the historical evidence overwhelmingly rejects his position. Did you get a chance at all to kind of push back on him with any of that?
I decided to kind of ignore the very specific facts, because getting in a debate over them, that's a very kind of semantic argument. And so I just kind of responded with just like, comments about how just because non-Christians are involved does not mean that it's no longer a Christian institution. And, I kind of gave churches literally as an example. And just like a church, you're not going to have membership from other religions, but you will have open doors to anybody. And he kind of shrugged off that question, and comment, and he kind of just talked about how America was founded by these so-called Judeo-Christian principles. I mean, I think at that point he had kind of conceded. He understood that, okay, this isn't just some stupid kid with no facts, and he kind of knows what's happening. And Vivek knows what's happening. Vivek knows that he's kind of living on this throne of lies, and so he can't keep fighting. And so he kind of does concede, but in a very weak way. And then he kind of sent me off, tells me to keep praying. But yeah, no, I wish I could have had the time to challenge him more on those like specific facts. But obviously, when you're debating over those sorts of things, it becomes a very just like it's really down to your opinion, and there's a source supporting either side that seems valid. So
Right. So one thing I wasn't able to kind of get a grasp from the video, what was the audience? What was the mood of the audience during this whole exchange? Did it seem like majority were on your side, majority were on Vivek's side? There was kind of an even split. What were the dynamics that you noticed there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely leaning towards Vivek's side, and I think, frankly, at the end of the day, it's an educational issue. I think the more people look into these issues, the more they'll start to take the side of our King Jesus Christ. I mean, there was definitely some cheering and hooting and hollering when I said, Christianity is the one true faith, and all other gods are demons. People liked that, but then when he finished his response about what he loves about America is that we don't have a religious principle that defines us, he got an even bigger cheer. So I think the crowd was definitely on his side, but I think these are things that it's a shifting wave, definitely.
Did anybody come up to you and talk to you after, both either positive, negative? Did you get any specific interactions with people after this?
Yeah, so I did on my way out. I just after that I did kind of head out. I had a church event happening at home and I wanted to catch some people before they leave because I was bummed to be missing it. And a guy on my way out did say like thank me for asking that question. And I had a couple people come up to me in school the day after and kind of talk to me about it. But no, there wasn't like too much. I honestly didn't stick around too long to get much of a reception about that. But yeah.
No, totally fair, totally honest. Church is a very important thing. I know when we were trying to schedule this, you mentioned something about having a church on Wednesday nights. I didn't want to drag you away from that, so my
Yeah.
apologies. But so you had mentioned at the beginning that before that this whole kind of incident kind of got you more motivated to get into the political field. What were kind of the indications of what you wanted to do before that, and how has that changed since?
Yeah, I mean, so this incident absolutely motivated me to kind of just shift my direction towards more like, okay, how can we see political action uh, kind of be representative of what we want in our Christian truths? I absolutely was becoming more grounded in my faith prior to this event, which is kind of what inspired me to speak. But kind of the reaction from the crowd and the way that the GOP and kind of the establishment Republican Party and establishment conservatives were willing to kind of endorse this guy right after our governor had given a lecture that was pretty much entirely about Christianity, and then prayed with us, and then we bring on a Hindu onto stage, and so I realized it's like, okay, I could, fully dedicate my life to a ministerial calling, and it's absolutely still something on my mind, or I could use my God-given talents, which, are such a blessing of just kind of being able to speak, and go and influence the political realm, and just absolutely see Christianity pushed as more of a doctrine there, and see Christian nationalism kind of start to grow in popularity, become the new mainstream. Because the fact of the matter is that the current mainstream in our Republican Party is not representative, certainly not of young men, but honestly, in general, just of the people as a whole.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. And I would encourage you, obviously pray for what direction and what calling that the Lord wants to put on your heart. But,
Absolutely.
it's entirely possible. You look at guys like Doug Wilson, you look at guys like Dusty Devers down in Oklahoma, you look at the guys out in Ogden, Utah. You look around and you see, it's possible to have both a ministerial calling and to speak into the political realm and have influence there as well. I mean, like I said, Dusty Devers, pastor who has ran for state senate and is currently um, influencing policy in the state of Oklahoma. You look at where I go to school. I go to Liberty University, started by Jerry Falwell, which he had some views I agree with, some views I disagree with. Regardless, I still hold him as a personal hero and a gold standard of someone we should look up to for the pure fact that it's a Christian minister who saw the decay and the decadence going on in his country and said, I'm not just going to sit by. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to get out there and engage. He starts the moral majority and he gets Christians engaged. Something that I think we can definitely learn from, learn from the mistakes, learn from the successes, and build off of that. So I would, encourage you, if you can, find a way to pursue both. But
Yeah.
ultimately, let the Lord lead you to where he wants you to go. I mean, in high school, I wanted to play music for a living. I wanted to be a metal guitarist, and now I'm in law school, pursuing a career in the political field. You never know what direction God's going to take you until you start following his call and answering yes when he says, I want you to go somewhere. And we saw that in Charlie Kirk's life.
Mm.
Um, it's just something that you've got to take hold of and that you have got to follow no matter where it leads you.
Yeah, absolutely. And pursuing both of those would be amazing and perfect. And obviously, as you said, we'll just constant prayer, obviously, for wisdom is the key there in decision making. But the key takeaway is just that like we need a radical change. We need ministers We need politicians. We need people who are both, as you said. Dusty Devers, what he's doing is absolutely great. And also what people like Douglas Wilson and the Ogden guys are doing in terms of just having a massive influence in the political realm is super key. And it's really been great to see that movement in the window of what is considered politically acceptable um, in the recent years.
Absolutely. Um, so you mentioned that you had just started kind of growing in your faith more recently and that's what motivated you to get into this event. What was your background like within that, and what kind of motivated you to start taking Christianity more seriously, start taking your faith in Christ more seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in a Christian family. We were actually in California for a while, but we eventually moved up here to Montana, as most people who are in California are doing, kind of getting out of there, going somewhere reasonable. And when we got here, we kind of plugged ourselves into an actually solid church. And my dad also started taking some steps in the faith where he had not previously. And I think that was definitely very inspirational to me. And so kind of just we're in a PCA church here, and just kind of being around a more conservative Christian, very serious environment with people who are serious about the faith has been absolutely inspirational. And also just some people that I've gotten to know very well that set as examples. And so that kind of served as like a base. And then from that, I moved on to kind of some more, more not mainstream, but like well-known stuff. I started listening to podcasts. A big one for me has been Contra Mundum, which is Andrew Isker and CJ Angle, and I love their stuff. I've been reading a bit of Doug Wilson recently. The Ogden guys are great. And so all these kind of influences kind of moved me from just being, okay, I'm going to start taking my faith more seriously, to, okay, how can I use my faith to make the world a better place? How can the gospel be proclaimed by the magistrates? How can we fight for Christianity and save our nation through Christianity, not through political action? Because the two are intertwined at the end of the day. Like political action, yes, and it should be influenced by Christianity. Christianity should be at the core of that political action.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I noticed, I think we have some very similar influences. I noticed, I actually found out about you before the debate because of our mutual friend at the Eamon Author, the Des Volt pin guy. I've
Got
got
my
I've
got
got
my pen
mine
on.
on right now.
Nice.
Recent acquirance.
Yeah.
Um, these pins, I don't know if you've noticed this. I get so many like people asking about them just all around. I got at
Honestly.
the law school. At Liberty this week, we are having a thing called the CEO Summit. There's like hundreds of high-level CEOs, business people, political figures, all convening on Liberty's campus for the purpose of interacting with Liberty students and hopefully getting some Christian kids who are hardworking into these environments where they're needed most. But it is interesting to see, and it kind of speaks to a broader trend that I'm sure you've been noticing. I've been noticing in our generation where specifically guys our age are not okay with the status quo. They're not okay with how things have been. They want more. And we're seeing more and more guys turn to Christianity for that source of truth, for that bedrock, for that grounding. You look around and we've got guys going to the Catholic Church and the Orthodox side, little discouraged by that, but we've also got a lot of guys turning to the Reformed faith. I know you're Presbyterian. I am a Reformed Baptist. We do not have to get into the details, but um, have you noticed that just locally, even in your own area? I mean, obviously we see it online, but what have you noticed locally in your high school, around in your church, just around your area with how Gen Z is kind of shifting on these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say so in my area, there's a shift towards anger towards the establishment. There's a shift towards anger towards kind of the very effeminate structure we have in our country right now. So what you get as a product of a bunch of mindless school rules, incredibly stressful schedule, stressful future, and kind of all these things that are pointing you everywhere other than the right direction. It naturally creates stress and anger. And so what the first thing I see that is pretty much unanimous among every single guy I know that is in Gen Z is anger at the authority and at the system in some way. Now, that's natural in a teenager. However, every single person that you mention the truth to, every single person that you mention Christianity, Christian nationalism, um, Jesus Christ, and just the beauty of the gospel to, they are immediately interested. It's all they're waiting for is somebody to tell them the answer. And the thing is, as Christians, we have to jump on that because they will find the answer in the wrong places. They're going to go towards people who are just straight up racists. Because at the end of the day, if the establishment, right, they're trying to push white guilt, right? And they want to make us extremely guilty of our heritage and of America, right? And so the natural response to that, if you're not introduced to the gospel, is going to be, it's going to be Nick Fuentes, it's going to be neo-Nazism, and it's going to be all these things that you really don't want people going, but it is the direction people are being pushed towards. And so as Christians, we kind of need to jump in, stop them where they're at and say, hey, this is the truth. And they immediately gravitate towards it. They absolutely want to hear the truth. And so that's what I noticed at school. And then in church, obviously you have people that are kind of familiar with the truth. A lot of them have been hearing it all their lives, especially in like a PCA community in a town like Bozeman. You have, all these guys were baptized as infants and have been raised in that faith as long as they've known. But they are very, very lukewarm, if that, at best they're lukewarm, and at worst they're going there because their parents forced them to. And so what you need to do with them is then kind of get them into the more deep stuff, introduce them to complex theological ideas and stuff, and they find that stuff very attractive. I found that with a group of young men that I've been kind of leading in a Bible study. They would have been in that like lukewarm to going because their parents forced them to range there. And I started doing Bible study with them. First, we kind of just covered the basics, and it's expanded more into, hey, go listen to this podcast. Hey, we need to go do this, this form of political action. Here's a, complicated theological truth. Here's the issue with our government. And they immediately latch onto that because it's true and because it makes sense. They're looking for answers. We just need to provide the answers. So that's kind of the shift that I've noticed with young men, especially, is they're angry. And so who is going to provide the answer to their anger?
A couple of comments on that. I think first off, you're absolutely correct. There is a resentment that is built in young men these days, and it comes from a understandable place. I mean, I know my experience. I'm probably a few years older than you, but when I was coming up through high school, I graduated in 2020, right when COVID was going on, and I noticed. You had guys applying to college. You had guys trying to get into colleges, and they're seeing their applications waitlisted or turned down because of these DEI policies, affirmative action, this and that. That builds a resentment. And then if they get into college, wherever they end up going, obviously not at Liberty, but anywhere else, they see their professors saying, white straight men, Christian men are the source of every single issue that's ever occurred in all of humanity ever. And it's ridiculous, but it does build this resentment. And like you said, Christians have not been doing a great job of speaking to that and trying to answer for that. And I think that's something we need to do better for. Because, if you don't, you do get guys like Andrew Tate who become the model of masculinity when he shouldn't be. You do get guys like Nick Fuentes who are preaching ideas that I think personally are not compatible with most mainstream Christian doctrine. You see these people that they're identifying the right problems, but they're preaching the wrong message. And the people who have the right message are not willing to step up. And kind of a second point on your latter half of your answer there, like, men are naturally driven to ambition and action. And when the church doesn't present them with that, you get apathy. It's just what happens. And so I'm encouraged by what you're doing, because you think of Paul, I believe it's in either 1st or 2nd Corinthians, where Paul talks about you need to move from the milk when you're an infant into the solid food. But a lot of churches in our country, they do a great job of providing the milk, but they're not helping especially young men through the discipleship get into that solid food. And so it's encouraging to see guys like you who are actually out here challenging your peers and saying, hey guys, you need to mature. You need to start digging deeper into these things. You need to actually turn this thing that you believe into action because, James, faith without works is dead. And so it's not that works save us, but it's that the works are the evidence of our faith. And if you're not out here actually acting on your faith like you've been doing, like I'm trying to do in my community, like a lot of the audience is trying to do across the country, it's going to stalemate. You're going to turn up lukewarm. And, our Savior said, if you're lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want that to happen to any of the guys in our generation. So it's encouraging to see the work that you're out here doing, and I'm glad someone is stepping up and that people are starting to step up and wake up and say, hey, we need to get these young guys, we need to get onto this solid food and get them active in evangelism, in political activity and engagement, and these sources of action that where they can take this truth that they know and turn it into something that's going to make the country a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I really want to touch on what you said about how these churches are great at providing the milk, but there's honestly just a lack of solid food. And I think you see that even within a lot of really solid conservative denominations, and conservative churches. Today, I was really pained. I lead my junior high youth group in my junior high youth group, and we had a ratio of about one guy to every five girls. That's not normal. And my church is really solid. It's really great. I love it. We have great pastors, but the youth group often it's very feminine in its nature. And this is true with literally every single youth group in the entire country. Like I have yet to hear of a youth group that isn't, singing very contemporary music, kind of electric guitar type deal. You got the projector with the words on it, right? And this is the normal, even in really solid traditional churches, which I find really interesting. And so, whether young men know it or not, that's not something they like. They want the tradition, they want the pews, they want the hymns, and they want complex ideas. Like we love to just sit around and talk. Within my specific group at the high school, youth group, we have great theological conversations and political conversations with our leader, who's a really great masculine solid guy, but that isn't a universal thing in modern churches, and so I think that's a huge issue we need to address. And as I said, a lot of the guys, once again, they don't understand it. They don't really know why they don't like youth group, but as every single one, right, I said to them, I was like, man, I wish we would just sing hymns more in youth group. I wish our youth group was, more traditional. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That would be nice. Like those songs do feel like they hit closer to home. Like they're more worshiping our Lord. Like it doesn't feel reverent. And so I think the church kind of has to take a hold of even the young man that we already have and encourage them and give them a place to be men.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Well, Jeremy, thank you for joining tonight. Where can
Yeah.
where can people find you?
Yeah, so right now I'm just on Twitter, and my handle is WFCJRC, just under the name Jeremy Carl. So that's pretty much where I'm going to be posting all my stuff. Um, and yeah, I had a great time tonight. So thank you for having me on. This was a great conversation.
Of course, thank you for coming on. And guys, definitely follow him. I've been tracking for the last couple of days some really based takes coming out of his Twitter account. We appreciate it. We appreciate all you guys for watching. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for watching. God loves you, so do I, and I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you, Jeremy, again.
Yeah, of course. God bless.